Welcome to Mindful Me. I'm your host, Dr. Marga, family medicine physician and life coach practicing medical wellness. This health and wellness show was born out of the needs I saw as a medical doctor. People are curious and are even demanding information and options on how to get healthier, and more importantly, how do we improve our quality of life? And quality of life is simply, how do I feel good from moment to moment, minute to minute, hour to hour, day to day? It is my goal to highlight to you, our viewers, at home, the knowledge and experience of various experts from both mainstream and complementary disciplines to inspire action in our communities in the areas of self-care and self-development, physically, mentally, and energetically. We are starting a new chapter here in Mindful Me Masterpiece, focusing our community on the evolution of ourselves to the elevated version of ourselves. Today's guest is Brenda Rodriguez, CEO of Lynn Community Health Center. Brenda Rodriguez is the Chief Executive Officer of Lynn Community Health. It is a federal health qualified health center serving 44,000 patients or more here in Massachusetts. Brenda is an accomplished healthcare executive with a diverse and progressive career. Prior to joining Lynn, Brenda served as the Chief Strategy and Financial Officer at Lowell Community Health, successfully instituting growth strategies and equitable healthcare practices. Before entering community health, Brenda led financial and operating practices in education and media firms, including Boston.com. She began her professional career at PricewaterhouseCoopers. Brenda holds a BS from Boston University and an MBA from Duke University. She's a longtime Bostonian. Her parents are from the same small town in Arroyo, Puerto Rico. And today, we learn more of her origin story. Welcome, Brenda.
Thank you, Dr. Marga. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So someone like yourselves, I really want to share my excitement to the audience about learning how it is that someone from your background, from your culture, from your education, landed in such, I would say, an influential and powerful role in Lynn, Massachusetts. And that origin story is just very interesting to me because it's such a massively impactful role. And I'm sure it keeps you up at nights playing this role. And for someone to step into that role is just very, very, like, it's a privilege. And we want to know what when you pull back the curtain, who is that person behind all of that, right? So I would say, why don't we start with something very basic, like when you wake up in the morning, like what gets you out of bed in the morning, and like how do your mornings go, and how do you fuel yourself, for the rest of the day?
So my mornings, thank you so much for that question.
Yeah.
And for just acknowledging my family being from Arroyo, Puerto Rico. And that is the beginning of my story in terms of, where my parents came from, how they came to this country, working in a factory. And so remembering where my family and my parents, where they're from, what they've had to do and what they did to really just survive day to day. Understanding that when I wake up every morning, I know my privilege. I know the obstacles and the barriers that so many of our patients, so many of our community members go through every day. And I have those shared lived experiences. And so I connect with that. You have to connect with your meaning and your purpose. And it starts there. And so for me, just having respect and honor for what my parents and their parents So my grandmother, Benita, she's 96 years old. She's going to be 97 in a couple of months. She actually had a restaurant and a club in Chelsea, Massachusetts back in the 60s before the Great Fire. So this was a woman that was very pioneering. And, she has very little, but her strength and her genius and her resilience. And I tap into that. And that makes me joyful, just knowing that as a people, as a community, as our patients that we serve, that they're resilient and we all have a story. So I bring that into this role.
And I want to call this out because you will see this in many episodes, how people, one of the key things and successes of people is when they radiate with gratitude. And that is your version of it. And I love it because there's also the concept of generational healing, how each generation is elevated before compared to the previous.
Yes.
And that's in that share, you captured both gratitude and generational healing. So thank you so much for that. I still find it very interesting how you could have just led a more straightforward business like Price Waterhouse to community health. Like you didn't have to go there. So what was pulling you towards the direction of community health out of all directions?
Well, it's been a lifetime and long time journey. So
Yes.
I am a community health center patient. And for me, the community health center has always been pivotal in different times of my life. So I was a young parent. There was a time I was homeless. There was a time that my young family and I, my husband and I, we worked hard to try to make ends meet, but we still could not make ends meet. So it was programs like the Women in Infant Children's Program, the WIC program, that helped us with providing some additional provisions, to our young family. And so the health center has always had a such an important role in my life. So as I was getting well trained by these amazing companies and pursuing my degree and my education, there was always something deep inside of me that wanted more and wanted to see health and healing for my community. So I've always worked on that for myself. And so I've been very blessed and privileged to be with others that have looked out for me. When we talk about having a village, I've had that village. And it hasn't always been by the people in my life that I would have expected to be there for me. It's been teachers, it's been clinicians, it's been providers, it's been pastors, it's been friends, it's been parents of friends that have looked out for me. And so throughout those very difficult experiences, I found some healing. I found some some comfort knowing that we don't have to have all the answers, and that we all have struggled in some kind of way, but we can move forward. And so now, over the years, that has turned into a desire to bring that understanding and to bring that agency as far and as wide as I can. And so now I have that opportunity to do that as CEO.
And I see it, the glimmer in your eye, how powerful you radiate with that desire. I want to ask you, you glossed over some really big challenges in just that last bit where you said you were a young parent and even going through homelessness. Not everybody succeeds to your level, and that's where the magic is. It's because obviously there are many people who've met those challenges. What do you think made you different from, and this is for me.
Yes.
And I want you to reflect on this. Sometimes I hear two voices in my head. One that could have gone the other way, yes, and the other that have chosen this path that led you here. How is that, how did you toggle with those challenges, and how was that conversation where you could have gone the other way and yet you chose the higher path? If you could walk us through some maybe key life events or some moments where I think the audience will be able to connect with that story.
So interesting thing is that the path that we take, it's still the same person. So I am still the same person that had, found herself in difficult situations, maybe did not make the best decisions, maybe showed poor judgment, maybe had not had the best parental guidance. I am still that person. And so it's not a difference between picking the right path and the wrong path. It is one path. And on that one path, you have both. You have the successes and you have the failures. And so what I have learned to do is embrace both. When I was homeless, I was living in a shelter. The blessing and the silver lining in that is that I actually, I don't know where the courage came from, but the courage came, and for me to leave a household that was full of domestic violence. And so even though the path of being homeless seemed like a bad path, that was the right path, and that actually strengthened me. I was fortunate, to be in a shelter where it was safe, and I could still function. I was in school. I was an undergraduate student. It allowed me to still go to school. There's some people that find themselves unhoused that are not able to do that. So the reason that I've been able to now, what looks like a more positive path, it seems to be that, that I'm on this more positive path. I'm actually on the same path because I look for the silver lining. So some people may say, being a CO in healthcare, being in a community health center, they may not look at that path as the best path, but that is a great path because of what I get to do. So I've looked at the obstacles in my life, and I think that has been the difference, as a way to strengthen my character, to show my integrity, to practice humility, and to be a little bit more human, a little bit more sane. Not that I invite tragedy, and I would not invite that in my life or anyone else's life, but our path as human beings is a difficult path. And so there are some people that are dealing with tragedies that I can't even fathom. But they find a way to turn those tragedies into things that provide hope for themselves and for others. And all along, that's what I've tried to do. I've leaned a lot on my faith. I've also have had this kind of unicorn mindset that
I like that.
I'm never going to be defined or held back by my experiences, because we're so much more than that. We're so much more than the race, gender identity that we're told that we are. We're so much more than times in our life when things have not gone the way we have wanted them to go. So I seek always to get past that with the strength of others, many times not with my own strength, but with the strength of others in community. So now, being a CO at a community health practice, I get to try and foster a little bit of that as much as I can to my colleagues and also to the community at large.
I love it. I want that was such a rich share. I wanted to go back to one important thing that I held on to what you said, which I actually tell patients on a regular basis. You said that as hard as moving to a shelter, how hard it was to make that decision, you knew that you had to get out of this atmosphere of toxicity. And so I invite patients to focus on that, to become aware if there are people in their lives who are influencing them with a negative energy.
Yes.
And to for some way you made a big choice. But sometimes some people, because toxicity becomes familiar, you don't realize you choose that. In this case, I'm sure it wasn't an easy choice. in by any means what you decided to do, because I guess what I wanted to say is sometimes toxicity can become so familiar that you end up choosing it.
Yes.
And making a different choice is the clear message that you shared. So setting that aside, I also wanted to call out the lesson of community again. I think, we always hear it takes a village, but I'm inviting the audience out there to just reflect on that. How can we take part in the work of being part of a village that uplifts other people? And I've also felt when I'm taken away from that path that I shrink. I shrink to I would sometimes say selfish, overwhelmed, instead of being part of something bigger and outside of me. And that's the kind of power that I feel like has impacted your own life, where you realize, yes, you had to, this is where I want to say, where you were invited to step up to a higher energy and meet the people who were supporting you. That's the message that I'm hearing there. And now you get to do it in such a big way, because basically you sitting at the top of an organization, I truly believe that your energy can trickle down to the different levels below you. And so it's just very refreshing to me that you come with such conscious leadership. If you think, since we've been led there, how did you grow to be a leader? I'm sure that was a journey. So what are some of your thoughts around that?
Yeah, so first, I don't believe leadership is about a title. It's really about how you show up. It's about how you serve. It's about how you love.
Yes.
And so, I do think leadership is not devoid of hard work. So I've always, and again, it goes back to my personal journey. The things that I had to deal with personally, have been so tough that the workplace for me has always felt like a playground. And I would wonder, why people, in the workspace sometimes would not just allow themselves to be free. And why were so many systems designed to tamp people down? And why aren't we recognizing the genius of our colleagues and what people bring? And what is holding us? What is holding me back? What is holding us back from being powerful agents to get creativity and resourcefulness out there to have better outcomes, better results? And so I work hard, and I think that you can't shy away from that. So when I was 13, 14, 15 years old, I was working at a fast food restaurant, became an assistant manager, and at the time they weren't checking I-9s, but I would leave my house at 4:45 in the morning to walk to Cambridge, Massachusetts, to be there to open up the door by 5:45 a.m. And I do think that sometime in your career, in your professional journey, whether it happens when you're young and or later, but you have to feel that sacrifice for others, and I think that a leadership journey is not rich, it's not meaningful if it doesn't include having sacrifice and also going places that others are not willing to go.
There you go.
So I remember I had an opportunity when I was working in media at the New York Times Company to at the time offshoring was popular and outsourcing was popular. And we had an opportunity to work with the company to bring some colleagues from India, some associates, to learn some back office work. And we needed that support in order for us to work on many more important things. But I had the opportunity to go to India, and I went to India, and a lot of my colleagues would not go. And it wasn't because of, they could not go. It wasn't because that opportunity wasn't there, but because they did not appreciate the cultural aspect of it. They didn't appreciate that you could work across continents to do some important work together. And so looking at collaborations outside of the norm is something that I've always sought. And if you want leadership in your, and have meaningful leadership in your journey, you have to look at collaborations and partnerships outside of what feels comfortable to you, outside of your industry, outside of your sector, outside of your race, your gender, your language. And I think that we're part of a grand, beautiful world. And so I feel really strongly that that is something that has helped me in my leadership, is constantly finding myself in spaces where sometimes others are not willing to be in. And you have to be willing to be a little uncomfortable at times and be open. And I'm a lifelong learner, so I get the most creative ideas from speaking to people that are not even part of the work that I do.
That's right, that's right. I was going to say about the discomfort. I think there is a healthy amount of discomfort. I think it's the discomfort of growth.
Yes.
Yes. As a leader, I think I listen to Tony Robbins a
Yes,
lot. I'm going to
yeah.
paraphrase him. He said, I'm going to paraphrase. He said something like, for greatness, you have to become comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yes.
I mean, it's not to the point of breakage.
Uh-huh.
And you will be able, for people who are open to walk the walk and do that journey, you will be able to tell. It's not a kind of discomfort of toxicity, of being around people who are just not meeting you where you want to go. It's a discomfort of change, of promoting, of advocating. And I also sometimes, as a leader, sometimes there is an illusion of loneliness, because for us, well, what you hope to be a short amount of time, you're the only one, bullhorning a message until people catch on. Can you relate with that in terms of your experience?
I can. I would also say that one of the things I spend a lot of time on with my senior leadership team is creating shared accountability, creating a shared voice, a shared message, and understanding that my ultimate duty really is to help lift their agency. Yes. And so sometimes I may have this big, bold message, and one of them or one of our providers or someone else may say, that's not the right message. How about this?
Yes,
and I think that it is about having courage and having boldness, but also having the vulnerability and the openness to say, even with, as courageous and as bold as I might, stand up to this situation, there might be others that really can fine tune and address this in a much better way than I can right now. Because, you summon your best self, but sometimes you're not always getting, we're human beings, so we need others. But courage, boldness, vulnerability, openness.
Is there a message that you have out there for future healthcare leaders, reflecting on your journey, the strength, the resilience, the contemplation? What would you have to say to those who are in the woods, running behind you?
Those emerging leaders? I would say that, learn from our the pioneers that came out of the civil rights movement that focused on health justice. And it doesn't matter if you work in health tech, if you work in a community health center, in a hospital, large hospital system, find your meaning and your purpose for the work. Show people who you are. And, like someone like me, I could be in spreadsheets all day. And so, talking to people has not always been my most favorite thing. But you find your meaning and your purpose and your connection, and you share that. You share that out to people. Share with folks your priorities. And do not be afraid to make tough decisions. People expect that. Make the tough decisions and understand your most important job, and that's to lift the agency of your colleagues and of your community, however you define your community.
If there was an audience standing ovation, please. Thank you so much for this very, very precious moment amidst your very, very busy schedule to share like a deeper part of yourself. And I hope This serves those who are engaging us virtually, and I just, it's a privilege to provide the bullhorn and the microphone, the megaphone to folks like yourselves, and I sincerely thank you. This has been another episode of Mindful Me. Please catch us on Facebook and YouTube. Thank you so much. We will see you again.